Chapter 14. The Dodecahedron leads the way. Up ahead, the road divided into three, and as if in reply to Milo's question, an enormous road sign pointing in all three directions stated clearly, to Dodecahedron, 5 miles, 1,600 rods, 8,800 yards, 26,400 feet, 316,800 inches, 633,600 half inches, and then some. "Let's travel by miles," advised Humbug. "It's shorter." "Let's travel by half inches," suggested Milo. "It's quicker." "But which road should we take?" asked Talk. "It must make a difference." As they argued, a most peculiar little figure stepped nimbly from behind the sign and approached them, talking all the while. "Yes, indeed it does. Certainly, yes, it does make a difference, undoubtedly." He was constructed, for that's really the only way to describe him, of a large assortment of lines and angles connected together into one solid many-sided shape, somewhat like a cube, that's all. That's had all its corners cut off and then had all its corners cut off again. Each of the edges was neatly labeled with a small letter, and each of the angles with a large one. He wore a handsome beret on top, and peering intently from one of his several surfaces was a very serious face. Perhaps if you look at the picture, you'll know what I mean. When he reached the car, the figure doffed his cap, and recited in a loud, clear voice, "My angles are many, my sides are not few. I am the Dodecahedron. Who are you?" "What's a dodecahedron?" inquired Milo, who was barely able to pronounce the strange word. "See for yourself," he said, turning around slowly. "A dodecahedron is a mathematical shape with 12 faces." Just as he said it, 11 other faces appeared, one on each surface, and each one wore a different expression. "I usually use one at a time," he confided, as all but the smiling one disappeared again. "It saves wear and tear. What are you called?" "Milo," said Milo. "That's an odd name," he said, changing his smiling face for a frowning one. "And you only have one face." "Is that bad?" asked Milo, making sure it was still there. "You'll soon wear it out using it for everything," replied the dodecahedron. "Now I have one for smiling, one for laughing, one for crying, one for frowning, one for thinking, one for pouting, and 6 more besides. Is everyone with one face called a Milo?" "Oh no," Milo replied. "Some are called Henry or George or Robert or John or lots of other things." "How terribly confusing," he cried. "Everything here is called exactly what it is. The triangles are called triangles, the circles are called circles, and even the same numbers have the same name." "Why, can you imagine what would happen if we named all the twos Henry or George or Robert or John or lots of other things? You'd have to say Robert plus John equals 4, and if the fourth name were Albert, things would be hopeless." "I never thought of it that way," Milo admitted. "Then I suggest you begin at once," admonished the dodecahedron from his admonishing face. "For here in Dodecahedron, everything is quite precise." "Then perhaps you can help us decide which road to take," said Milo. "By all means," he replied happily. "There's nothing to it. If a smaller car carrying 3 people at 30 miles an hour for 10 minutes along the road, 5 miles along at 11:35 in the morning, starts at the same time as 3 people who have been traveling in a little automobile at 20 miles an hour for 15 minutes on another road exactly twice as long as one half the distance of the other, while a dog, a bug, and a boy travel an equal distance in the same time or the same distance in an equal time along the third road in mid-October, then which one arrives first and which is the best way to go? 17, shouted the humbug, scribbling furiously on a piece of paper. Well, I'm not sure, but Milo stammered after several minutes of frantic figuring. You have to do better than that, scolded the Dodecahedron, or you'll never know how far you've gone or whether or not you've ever gotten there. I'm not very good at problems, admitted Milo. What a shame, sighed the Dodecahedron. They are so very useful. Why, did you know that if a beaver 2 feet long with a tail a foot and a half long can build a dam 12 feet high and 6 feet wide in 2 days, all you would need to build Boulder Dam is a beaver 68 feet long with a 51-foot tail. Where would you find a beaver that big? Grumbled the humbug as his pencil pointed snapped. Sure, I don't know, he replied, but if you did, you'd certainly know what to do with him. That's absurd. That's absurd, objected Milo, whose head was spinning from all the numbers and questions. That may be true, he acknowledged, but it's completely accurate, and as long as the answer is right, who cares if the question is wrong? If you want sense, you'll have to make it yourself. All 3 roads arrived at the same place at the same time, interrupted Talk, who had patiently been doing the first question. Correct, shouted the Dodecahedron, and I'll take you there myself. Now you can see how important problems are. If you hadn't done this one properly, you might have gone the wrong way. I can't see where I made my mistake, said the humbug frantically, rechecking his figures. But if all the roads arrived at the same place at the same time, then aren't they all the right way? Asked Milo. Certainly not, he shouted, glaring from his most upset face. They're all the wrong way. Just because you have a choice doesn't mean that any of them has to be right. He walked to the sign and quickly spun it around 3 times. As it did, the 3 roads vanished and a new one suddenly appeared, heading in the direction that the sign now pointed. Is every road 5 miles from Ditchtopless? Asked Milo. I'm afraid it has to be, the Dodecahedron replied, leaping onto the back of the car. It's only the sign we've got. The new road was quite bumpy and full of stones, and each time they hit one, the Dodecahedron bounced into the air and landed on one of his faces with a sulk or a smile or a laugh or a frown, depending on which one it was. We'll soon be there, he announced happily, after one of his short flights. Welcome to the land of numbers. It doesn't look very inviting, the bug remarked, for as they climbed higher and higher, not a tree or a blade of grass could be seen anywhere, only the rocks remained. Is this the place where numbers are made? Asked Milo as the car lurched again, and this time the Dodecahedron sailed off down the mountainside, head over heels and grunt over green moss, until he landed side up at what looked like the entrance to a cave. They are not made, he replied, as if nothing had happened. You have to dig for them. Don't you know anything at all about numbers? Well, I don't think they are very important, snapped Milo, too embarrassed to admit the truth. Not important? Roared the Dodecahedron, turning red with fury. Could you have tea for 2 without a 2, or 3 blind mice without 3? Would there be 4 corners of the earth if there weren't a 4? How would you sail the 7 seas without a 7? All I meant was, began Milo, but the Dodecahedron, overcome with emotion and shouting furiously, carried right on. If you had high hopes, how would you know how high they were? Did you know that narrow escapes come in all different widths? Would you travel the whole wide world without ever knowing how wide it was? How could you do anything at long last? He concluded, waving his arms over his head, without knowing how long the last was. Why, numbers are the most beautiful and valuable things in the world. Just follow me and I'll show you. He turned on his heel and stalked off into the cave. Come along, he shouted from the dark hole. I can't wait for you all day. In the moment they followed him into the mountain, it took several minutes for their eyes to become accustomed to the dim light, and during that time, strange scratching, scrapping, taping, scuffling noises could be heard all around them.